In the last episode, we saw that the DC drive was the first product in the industrial automation industry, and the earliest adopters were the paper industry. In this episode, I am connecting with Mr. Ashwin Panemangalore, one of the veterans of the automation industry. As I had mentioned earlier, one of the pioneering companies has been Larsen Toubro, which was headed by Mr. Vijay Dravid and assisted by Mr. Gogia. Ashwin joined Larsen Toubro more or less at the same time and was a pioneering person along with both of them to grow the automation industry in India. Here we have the talk with Mr. Ashwin Panemangalore.
Dravid joined us, and he came from GEC, and Mr. UV Rao brought him, and Mr. UV Rao introduced him to us, and he said, he comes from a background of drives. We didn't know what are drives, honestly. Variable speed drives, what is that? We only know AC motors are constant speed, and DC motors were hardly there. And he said he is going to help us get into drives business. So you need all your support. He needs all your support, and it will be part of switchgear. Once the business grows, we can think of making it independent. So the first thing he had to do was to educate us, get us familiar with what this DC drive is, and that's where it all started because it was not only educating people in the company, we also had to go and tell people outside about it. So I would say he was a pioneer as far as L&T was concerned in the market, and perhaps also in the market he was one of the pioneers, along with companies like yours, DBK, which came in at that time. And Dravid built an excellent team around him. He brought in people from IIT who were power electronics specialists in into key positions in R&D, engineering, and support, and built an excellent team of people around it. So that's how it started.
Yes, I know Mr. Dravid because I was working in GEC, but of course in the radio division when he was in the contracts division in GEC in Calcutta.
Oh yes, he was doing crane drives, I think, at that time.
And of course he left while I was in GEC, and subsequently I joined the DBK at that time. So I know, and I always consider Mr. Dravid to be the pioneer, and I think he's the father of industrial automation in India. I mean, I always feel that way because he's the man who really
he was the first.
To the great level that it's in today.
And then, of course, your Ketan was the gentleman who started from your side, right?
Yes.
Ketan.
In those early days, I mean, the early 70s when you joined, when actually the product was not known in the market, you were trying to develop, the industries were all just coming up at that time. I mean, the industrial growth was there. How did you see the market? I mean, where did you go and how did you do your first sales? How did you do your first product?
Well, he was the man who decided which industry segment would best be suited for drives. And the paper industry seemed to be a ready an application where one could use variable speed drives. And I think the first major job, in those days, any small order was a major order. So was Balarpur. Balarpur were setting up a coating plant in Yamunanagar, and Punjab and Haryana and that territory was being looked after by a very dynamic gentleman in L&T called R.K. Gogia. And he had very good, Gogia. So he had very good relations with all the customers around. And Balarpur was one of his good customers. And he found that they're setting up this coating plant. And Dravid said, yes, here's an opportunity for us. So that was the first order, which major order, which was booked by Mr. Dravid, and that was a challenging application. You understand, from a DC drive's perspective, with binders and calendars and the whole sectional system, which we booked in 1971 or 72, I think. And we didn't realize the challenge until we started executing the order, and it was a learning process along the way. But I would say we did a good job of it. All of it was well done. We had large panels of discrete electronic, analog electronic cards doing all the functions in racks, 19-inch racks, and the thyristor bridges with the control electronics for each motor, and there was double-ended regenerative drives which we built. So I would say that was a great start for us. And thereafter, the cement industry became a ready recipient of DC drives. And the first application in the cement, as you know, was a kiln drive. And our first, the customers were kind in those days, some of them. Many were circumspect about applying it. But among cement, I would say Madras Cement, who were headed by the Rajas, the Ramasubramaniam Raja, they were very, very both accommodative, and they were keen to use, they trusted us. And I would say we did all that we could to make sure that whatever was opportunity was given. So the first kiln drive we did was at Madras Cement, and the kiln takes a huge amount of current to at start, and to avoid tripping, we devised an improvised circuit which would bypass or delay the trip until the kiln started rotating, and, and that's how we managed. Once it started rotating, of course, controlling it was easier. So that's how we started in the cement industry with a few applications, kiln, coolers, maybe a couple of fans, and
I remember
after
a few terminologies, soft start, regenerative braking, all
yeah,
those things.
regenerative braking,
It is to be part of the
yeah,
cement kiln.
yeah, kiln had dynamic braking. You
Yes,
had a
dynamic
resistance
braking.
bank where all the energy was fed, and it came to a halt. Yeah, so we had regenerative, we had dynamic braking.
And we
So
had those consultant named Holtec, I think, basically in those
oh
days.
yeah,
Who was involved in cement plants.
Holtec was the main consultant for cement. And from Madras Cement, it went to ACC. ACC was, they had all these wet process plants, if you
Hmm.
remember. And when they wanted to modernize, they had to come into dry process. And dry process meant a change. And that's where the drives came in. So quite a few ACC plants came up as an opportunity for applying DC drives. So we did 7 or 8 ACC plants, later on, and that helped us to get a foothold into the industry. So looking back, I think it was paper, from Balarpur. We did 2 or 3 jobs in Balarpur. Then we did a project in West Coast Paper Mills at Dandeli, here near Hubli, and many more. So that was a start.
I know Andhra Pradesh paper mill also, I think,
APPM, yeah, right, yes,
I remember that.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And then I think
There was an
then the rolling mills and steel started taking.
yeah. Then steel, metal became the biggest consumer of drive systems. Not only drives, automation, and the work, everything. I think there was a point in that period, 70s, 80s, when metal was, I remember, was 40% of the business. Am I right? 50%?
Yeah.
Because metal was a market for us right from raw material handling plant, where the coal comes in and the iron ore comes in, and then from that point up to the blast furnace, when it is fed into the blast furnace, then it comes out into the billet uh, slabs, slab mills, the billet mills, hot rolling strip mills, and then you have the cold rolling, uh, and then you have the process lines, the cold rolled strips, and then you split them, and then you process them, and you galvanizing, and so on, cutting. The metal was big, huge, whether it was a Belay steel plant or whether it was a downstream processing unit. Metal was the market for us, for all of us, everybody.
Yes, yes, for all.
Everybody got his share. I
And I
would say.
think the tire also started coming at that time.
Tire, yes, yeah, very, very true. Tire.
I hope you enjoyed this interaction with Ashwin, and as we all know that the automation industry grew leaps and bounds after that, and we will carry it on in the next few episodes. Thank you.